Hello, and welcome to today's webinar featuring Jackie Nicholson, Executive Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, and Steve Jaynes, Senior Athletic Communications Specialist. We encourage everyone to connect to the RIT Alumni Association and athletics social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you will find up-to-date communications and opportunities about what's happening at RIT. Links are now in the chat box. We are in a campaign to transform the future of RIT. We want to take a moment to thank all those who have helped us reach over 80% toward our $1 billion goal. We're nearing the finish line, and all gifts play an important part in reaching that goal. If you would like to be part of transforming the future of RIT, consider supporting the RIT Athletics program in various ways by directing your gift to the Athletic Facility Enhancement Project that supports a new Tiger Stadium, track and field facility, baseball, softball field updates. For that, you can contact Dan Christner. His email will also appear in the chat box, or give it directly to an individual team, or becoming a Sensible Society member by committing a 5-year pledge of a minimum of $1,000 a year to the General Athletic Fund. That link is now appearing in the chat box. So on to a few housekeeping items to enjoy today's presentation. All attendees have joined in the mute mode. However, questions for our panelists can be entered into the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen at any time throughout the discussion. Live caption is also being provided and can also be found in the link located in your chat box. Now on to our webinar. New to RIT, and today's presenter is Jackie Nicholson, Executive Director of Intercollegiate Athletics. Following a national search in the spring of 2021, Nicholson was selected to lead the department's 25 teams and over 650 student athletes, coaches, and administrators. Nicholson spent the last 4 years as Associate Athletics Director for Academics, Compliance, and Student Athlete Development at Albany State, including a 6-month stint as Interim Director of Athletics in 2019 with the NCAA Division II Golden Rams. Also serving as department's senior women's administrator, her primary responsibilities included coordination of academic advisement, compliance, and the student athlete support services, while providing day-to-day oversight and strategic leadership for the department's 13 teams. Only the 5th athletic director in RIT history, Nicholson is the department's first Black AD, as well as the first woman to hold the position. Moderating today's discussion is Steve Jaynes, Senior Communications Specialist for Athletics, who will take your questions during the webinar. And with that, Steve, Jackie, the audience is yours.
Thank you, Candy. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. Jackie, I think the first question is, what drew you to RIT?
Well, I'll start. What drew me to RIT? I think the opportunity. So not the cold. I will tell everyone the cold did not draw me to Rochester at all, but the opportunity to lead a department that has a lot of traditions and a history. So we're talking about an institution that's almost 200 years old. So hopefully I'll be here in 8 years when we celebrate 200 years as the institution, but has a lot of history with athletics as well. So we're talking from time in the Empire 8 to now our time in the Liberty League. And I think the week I was announced, we won the Division III National Lacrosse Championship. So coming into a department that has a history of winning and a legacy, and then coming behind an AD who was here for many years. So Lou was here for 47 years. So I always try to recognize him in every speech I give for the next few years, just to recognize the legacy that he left from his time as a football coach to now his time as the leader of this department, and used to be the recreation department as well on campus. So just that history and that, opportunity to step behind a legend and kind of lead this department into a new era is something that really attracted me to this position.
You've been on board since July. It's been a whirlwind 3 months. How has that time been at RIT?
It's been exciting and challenging all at the same time. I think I counted last week was 90 days on October 1st. And I did a little over 225 meetings in my first 90 days. So I spent a lot of time shaking hands and meeting people on webinars and Zooms and in-person meetings. So it's just been fun and exciting. And I'll tell you, the most exciting part has been the last 3 weeks. I've spent an opportunity with every captain all of our sports programs, just meeting with them one-on-one during lunch and just really getting to know the students, why they chose RIT and what they want to leave here, what they want the legacy of athletics to be. So that's just been the most exciting part, is really getting to know the students. Then of course, getting to know the coaches and administrators as well has been really fun. And then just seeing how athletics plays a huge part in the experience of all students on this campus here at RIT.
And that was one of my questions. Talk to me about, the student athletes at RIT. How have you found them? They're a great bunch. I've been here 20 years. I think they're a great bunch, but it's good to get a new perspective from someone who's just come on board.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they're great. They're a great group of young men and women to work with. They really understand the aspect of being a student athlete. As a former Division I student athlete, I focus more on the athlete student, and I was totally, the opposite of what they are academically. So meeting with a lot of kids who have 4.0s, 3.99s, 3.95s. I think my lowest I've seen so far is like a 3.3. And so these students here at RIT, they get it and they understand the importance of academics and integrating themselves onto this campus as well. So a lot of them are involved in things outside of athletics. So it's not just athletics, but they're in their co-ops, they're in different clubs and different student organizations on campus. So they truly get what it means to be a student athlete. And that focus is really on kind of life after athletics. As they know, a lot of those professional opportunities don't exist. They really focus on making sure they get the most out of what they need academically here.
And getting into a little more the job aspect this year, you've kind of hit the ground running. What were some of your priorities as you came on board in July, as you're taking over this department?
I would say I didn't hit the ground running. I hit like the hill and start rolling down like the hill. So just kind of go really quick down the hill. But kind of my priorities for this year have really been focusing on that student athlete experience and making sure student athletes are prepared for life after athletics. Really focusing on program integrity, making sure we're doing things the right way, in the right way when no one's looking. So we want our coaches and our student athletes to really represent RIT, in the brand that we have at a great level as well. Really focusing on competitive success. We want to win. Everyone wants to see people win. So really focusing on making sure our coaches have what they need to be competitive. And that's on the academic side for our student athletes and then also on the quarter competition. So making sure our coaches have what they need. Really focusing on that external outreach. So spent time, I think, meeting with every division on campus so far. I think I have 2 left. One being university advancement and one being enrollment management, but have spent time with every other division outside of that to really, focusing on how does athletic integrate with those outside of that student affairs realm where we currently fall. Then spending some time with some local leaders as well, just meeting with them and seeing how the city can also support RIT athletics and then how RIT athletics can support the city. So the city of Henrietta and also the city of Rochester. So really focusing on those 2 things as well. And then university relations. So spend some time with some of our alumni this weekend up at West Point. So making sure we do more of those things and making sure our coaches are engaged with their alumni student athletes. I got our list of alumni student athletes last week from Alumni Affairs, and we have over 7,000 student athletes or alumni of RIT. So really seeing how we can reach out to them, engage them in our athletic program, and making sure we always have a touch point with them as well.
And what are some of the challenges that you have faced coming to Rochester, coming to RIT, help getting those priorities that you've outlined, getting them going and getting things going in the right direction?
I wouldn't say they're challenges, but they're just opportunities for growth. We have a very small administrative staff who are stretched really thin, but they're here and they want to work and they want to grow and they want to learn. So I would not say that's a challenge because of all those things I just said of what they want to put into this. They are putting in the time and the effort. They're asking the questions. They're answering my questions a lot. And sometimes they're just random questions. I'll say, hey, do you have 3 minutes? And it turns into an hour and a half. But they're willing to spend that time with me to kind of help move things forward and move this department forward as well. As you know, we're limited in resources as a Division III institution. And with 700 student athletes, sometimes we need more resources to ensure that our student athletes have what they need from its, equipment that they need to compete or practice. When it's time to travel on the road, making sure we have the buses and things that we need. So we've been doing things, but there's really room for growth here at the institution and how we can kind of increase things here.
I know we have, RIT has placed an emphasis on diversity and inclusion. I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how you want to integrate that overall vision of RIT into RIT athletics going forward.
I think it starts with the recruitment process. We're talking about student athletes and ensuring our coaches are equipped to look at a broad scope of things when they are recruiting student athletes to come to this institution. Just as the institution has placed a focus on recruitment, it's the same thing that is an extension into athletics. So we really want to spend some time really looking at, ensuring our coaches know what it means to recruit diverse students as well. And it's the same thing when we're recruiting staff and coaches at the institution. So making sure we have a true diverse pool when we're looking at candidates for the institutions. I'll tell everyone, RIT is a very unique place for students to come, high achieving academic institution. And you're talking about athletics as well. So you have to find that true niche of a student who wants to come here. And it can be challenging sometimes when you're trying to find those students, but making sure our coaches are equipped and our administrative staff is equipped when we're recruiting people to come RIT, that we're looking at those things as well. And then we're really spending some time focusing on DEI, really pushing our staff and our coaches to complete the certificate of humility here at RIT, which focuses on diversity, equity, inclusion. We've had 4 staff members completed. I think this was implemented last year at the institution, and we should have another 10 completed at the end of this academic year. So our coaches are really kind of buying into diversity, equity, inclusion. And Amy Reed was our head women's basketball coach and senior women administrator. She is really focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion. We did some NCAA one-team training with her in the Q Center over the last 3 weeks with our head coaches, assistant coaches, staff, and the student athletes as well. So she is really taking on the charge in the area of DEI. So I can't take the credit for it because Amy has kind of been leading the charge, and I have been able to come behind her and push her some more and push this toward the forefront over the last 90 days.
Along the same lines, when you came on board, was RIT in a good spot in terms of diversity and inclusion? I guess what I'm trying to say is, how were we, and is there, I mean, I know there's a lot more work going forward, but how RIT, I guess the question is, how is RIT set up to keep improving and on diversity and inclusion?
I think we're set up. Dr. Jenks is doing a good job, along with Dr. Smith, in leading the charge in diversity, equity, inclusion at the institution. I think we have to trickle that down some more into athletics and what we're doing here. We have a lot of work to do in terms of diversity within our department, just looking at the scope of our student athletes and the representation of just kind of race, equity, and gender just across the board. We just have some work to do in terms of that. So I think there's some work to do, but we have the support on campus to kind of lead that charge in athletics.
I have a question here from one of our guests, from Jessica Conley. What specific areas of opportunity are you seeing for women's sports in regards to equity?
Ooh, that's a good one. So as some of you may or may not know, we are entering year 50 of Title IX. We'll start in January 2022. So we will spend a lot of time talking about Title IX, but right now athletics is undergoing a gender equity and Title IX review and focusing really on our women's sports and the opportunities for females at RIT. So we are kind of undertaking that charge now. We should kind of have that study completed going into February of March of 2022. But really looking at the opportunities we're offering to see if that's what the students at this institution, and more particularly the female students, really want to see. Where do we land kind of in equity in terms of coaching staff? Kind of how many female head coaches do we have for our female sports? How many coaches do we have in ratio student athlete per female as well? And then kind of how we are financially supporting those programs. So I'm really evaluating those things, can see some inequities as soon as I started, which is kind of the reason why we undertook this gender equity and Title IX review, to make sure we have the documentation and the research to justify some of the changes we need to make with our female programs moving forward.
Thank you. Can you give us an update transitioning over, and folks, feel free to send in more questions and I'll intersperse them into Jackie. Transition over, we've got some projects going on. If folks have been on campus and they go past D-Lot, they'll see across the street a big giant construction project. Can you update us on those projects?
We have a lot of projects going on right now. So those who have not been back on campus in the last 6 months, we have undertaken 3 major projects, a little over $10 million. We are rebuilding the baseball field and softball field and putting turf out on those fields to allow our student athletes to compete year round on those fields. As you know, in Rochester, I'm not ready for the snow, but I keep hearing snow weekly. We get snow early and we can have snow late into the spring. So having turf fields really gives us an opportunity to compete earlier on our fields and maybe attract even more local teams who don't have the turf fields to compete here. So that'll really help out both of those programs. And we're hoping both of those are finished at the end of October. Moving forward with track and field, we have relocated the track across the street. And so now track will have their own facility. It'll be a brand new facility. That project should finish late into April or May of 2022. We just have to wait kind of for the top surface to be put down. So that'll be another huge project. And once the track is finally finished across the street, we will undertake starting the first phase of our stadium project with soccer and lacrosse. We'll be putting turf on that field with lights as well, which will give us an opportunity to compete on our main field year round and at nighttime. So right now that field does not have lights, so we don't have an opportunity to compete at night, and we have to go back to the back rec turf fields. So that'll give us an opportunity to really grow that. And then once we finish that phase, working really hard with university advancement and facilities on campus to start phase 2, which would be locker rooms and seating an actual true stadium for that field. So it'll sit about 1,500 people, and they'll have locker rooms for men's and women's soccer and men's and women's lacrosse and coaches' offices. So we're hoping we can break ground for that project in the next 2 years, hopefully earlier if possible, depending on how we fundraise for this project. But we are really looking forward to these projects, and we'll spend some time next summer really looking at our locker rooms as well. Inside of Clark and /Ritter, for those who have been here for a while, we are really jam-packed with locker rooms, and some of them are really old. So we'll spend some time looking at our locker rooms and trying to improve those for our current students.
We have a question here. What is your criteria for awarding athletic scholarships?
Currently, as a Division III institution, with most of our programs, with the exception of men's and women's hockey, we do not award athletic scholarships. Even with our 2 Division I programs, we do not award scholarships. We have petitioned the NCAA on behalf of men's and women's hockey, along with the support of Union College, the Empire 8, Liberty League, and SUNYAC, to hopefully offer scholarships to our Division I student athletes, beginning as early as fall 2022. So we will get that vote. That'll go into the floor for in front of Division III membership in January of 2022. And so hopefully we'll know if we can have the opportunity to award scholarships. The coaches will have the ability to award those scholarships. It's 18 total scholarships between men's and women's hockey. They both get 18 each, but the coaches kind of set the criteria for that of how they want to award those scholarships.
That was the question. I was going to ask you, it's homecoming week. We have Brick City weekend. It's not the full-on Brick City weekend, but we do have a full docket of events. Are you looking forward to the various events that we have at home, culminating in the big game down at Blue Cross Arena this weekend?
I am looking forward to it. We have 11 of our athletic teams competing on Saturday, so we have a lot of events. 4 of our programs will be away from campus, but the rest will be on campus. So really encouraging those who are locally in town to come out and support any of our teams, beginning with men's and women's crew at 9 a.m. on Saturday, ending with men's hockey starting at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So we have a day full of activities and events. So really looking forward to that. Hopefully seeing some alumni at all of our events. We have a few alumni reunions within athletics. So hopefully we can kind of see people back on campus and shake some hands as well, but really looking forward to that event and getting people back on campus as well.
Getting back to some of the projects and priorities, you know, you've got your priorities this year, what you kind of want to get going. Talk about maybe sort of your down the road sort of priorities and goals that you see for RIT and RIT athletics?
I think my biggest one, kind of just thinking short term, I want to see RIT be known not only locally. We have, I think, 14 Division III institutions within a few hours of RIT, but I want us to be known regionally and then on the national level. And that's academically, we are known on the national level, but people don't know about RIT athletics. So I really want to move us forward so people know who we are, and we're competing at that high level each year, and our student athletes are graduating, which they do now, at a little higher rate than the institution. So we want to kind of continue those things and see that. I want to see, of course, our staff grow. So we have the staff here to support the number of student athletes we have. If we keep on growing, especially in our female side, our ratio of female student athletes to staff is going to keep on growing as it is with the male side as well. So we want to see that staffing grow from the coaching side and the administrative side as well. And we want to increase our engagement on campus with our student athletes. And then I said as well in the city. And then increase that engagement with our alumni. I think we have a lot of work to do with our alumni student athletes and how we pull them back in. Like I said, with 7,400 alumni, that's a lot of people to have as touch points. So we really want to make sure they're engaged and know that their tie to RIT doesn't end after your 4 years of a student. It's a lifelong commitment. So we really want to emphasize that lifelong commitment and really grow kind of in those areas in the near future.
We had a question. The question was, where do you see RIT moving under your leadership?
I think I just kind of answered that.
You did.
In talking about that.
Yep.
But really kind of, like I said, moving forward, regionally, locally, nationally, getting involved in Henrietta, in Rochester, Brighton, the local areas with our student athletes and seeing them engaged and re-engaging our alumni. I think is going to be some big things that we want to see. We have some engagement, some programs do really well with that engagement, but I think we have a lot of room to grow with that engagement and getting people back here on campus, or just kind of having sessions like this with them so they know what's going on with their programs.
We had another question from an attendee. Over the last few years, there has been some talk of RIT going all Division I. They wanted, where are we with those conversations is the question.
Well, those conversations, they were ongoing. Of March of 2022, there's a presentation about kind of what Division I would look like for RIT athletics. And then of course, I think a week later, COVID happened. So those conversations have been tabled, but they will kind of pick back up in the spring. We'll spend some time really diving into, is that what's going to be best for RIT athletics and the financial commitment that goes with being Division I with the amount of programs we have. So we really kind of have to look at our whole body of work and see if that'll be the best fit for us regionally. And then nationally on that Division I level, making sure we have the institutional and community support to move forward with being a Division I program. So we'll kind of undertake that study in the spring to see if we really fit in kind of that landscape of Division I.
I'm just glancing through some of another question we had. I lost it there, sorry. I'm scrolling. The question was, for student athletes recruiting tryouts, do you have a plan for ensuring any students deaf, hard of hearing, mainstream, homeschooled, and transferred are given the opportunity to be a part of RIT athletics?
Yes, I think they're very integrated in RIT athletics right now. We have a coordinator with NTID that is focused just on student athletes. And he was a former student athlete here at RIT. So this is something that our coaches do. I think we have 14 student athletes who identify this year as deaf or hard of hearing. So they are recruited at a high level. Of our coaches, I'm not going to say they're very fluent in ASL, but they can communicate on the ASL level. We just had a women's soccer player who graduated and is competing nationally, well, internationally technically, who was deaf and hard of hearing. So our coaches do recruit at that level and go after those students as well. So if those students can play and compete, please know that they are coming to RIT. And because RIT does have NTID, we get a lot of those students to come to campus and kind of alert the coaches ahead of time as well. So some of it's kind of grassroots recruiting when coaches are going out. Is sometimes the student athletes coming to those coaches to say, hey, I want to be a part of NTID at RIT, but I also want to compete in athletics. So we're really focusing on that and making sure we're staying involved as well.
We had another question. What were some things that surprised you about RIT that you didn't know before you came here?
I didn't know that we talk about snow a lot here at RIT. but really the size of the institution. So you knew as a D3, we are probably one of the larger Division III institutions across the country. So I knew the size, but really when you get on campus and see the campus, that's the true surprise when you talk about that Division III landscape, because you go to a lot of other Division III institutions around us and their campus is a lot smaller, and their impact is not as felt as RIT. And then truly the academic makeup of our student athletes. I mean, if you talk to these young men and women and you kind of see their grades on paper, it's amazing. And seeing the co-ops that they're getting and what they're able to do with balancing academics and athletics has been pretty amazing. And that was kind of exciting to see here as well. And then the commitment from our coaches. Most of our coaches have been at RIT, an average of 10 plus years. So there's a commitment to RIT and ensuring that we're growing here. So our coaches are committed to it. And that's the same thing with our administrators. Jance has been here for 20 plus years. I think Roger was here longer than that prior to you coming in. You have a lot of our administrators and coaches who are dedicated to RIT and want to see us grow and are willing to be a part of that growth as well.
Just scanning to see, I don't see any new questions.
We did have one for Tim that we missed when you talk about kind of the visible presence.
Yes, I see that. I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
I've seen you at many of the home contests that we've had so far. So go ahead and you can answer that. He was wondering about the visible presence of you and the other administrators and the staff at games.
Yep. So we do have at least one administrative staff outside of myself at every single home RIT event. You can usually find them standing at the gate or next to the bench. You will see them there. I try to get to as many home events. I missed my first home week this past weekend when I traveled with men's hockey to West Point. But I will spend some time this year traveling with every single one of our athletic programs. I go on the road with women's soccer next week and I think volleyball the week after, but have kind of times to travel with all of our programs this year just to see kind of how they travel and to have that additional support. But I try to attend everything that I can that's on campus, and then also some of our local competitions at U of R. I've been over there for a soccer game, over to NAS and Fish as well for different competitions we had over there this year. So I will kind of get on the road and travel with them. You'll see myself and you'll see my 10-year-old usually dragging her with me to go to these competitions, but she'll be there with her head down on her, tablet or cell phone. But we do try to be as involved and engaged as much as possible on campus, then kind of locally as well, what we can do.
I can say that if you're at Tiger Stadium, you will find Jackie over by the entrance where the athletes come in. So yes, she is there quite a bit. I'm just scanning if there's any other questions. I don't see any right now. Oh. Tim was very excited. Anything else? Future goals, future projects. We are in this COVID area, and we've all had to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. How has that been? Some of the challenges, maybe not difficulties, but challenges that you have had to face, and the folks in your department have had to face to be able to have fans at our games and have athletes and games this fall.
Yep, I think the biggest thing, and hats off to Jeff Siegel, who ran COVID testing on campus last year for the entire university, and then he's running it right now for athletics again this fall. But I just want to kind of recognize him as he is the one who's doing a lot of the work right now for athletics and leading the charge. But I think our student athletes have not gotten used to it, but they have gotten used to it in a way to ensuring that they're meeting the test requirements as set forth by the institution and the NCAA as well. So for those who are not vaccinated, we are testing 3 times per week based on kind of the levels in Monroe County as well. But they have all been very active and participate in it. And they know kind of what the requirements are. And so our student athletes are, they haven't given us any problems or issues or concerns. The coaches know. So we have times they do show up. They follow the masking requirements. When we go on the road, we follow that institution's policy as well in terms of COVID. They've been very supportive of it, and we're hoping we kind of get over this hump soon as well. And our student athletes hope we can get over this hump to kind of move forth and pass COVID hopefully in the near future as well.
We did have a question, any type of mandatory vaccination requirements to RIT and athletics? We do have stuff on the website, but I'll let you speak to that.
So right now, our only, so outside visitors, we do not have any requirements. We just are encouraging everyone to wear their mask or socially distance outside. Same thing indoor. RIT does have an institutional policy that masks are required indoor while visiting our athletic venues. So that is a requirement. Starting November 6th, we will have the policy to attend games. So men's and women's ice hockey games over at GPC. A vaccine will be required to attend those games and masks will be required. So we made some announcements, I think 2 weeks ago about those requirements, but that will go into effect starting November 6th. Right now, we don't see any policies coming forth for Clark because that's our only other indoor facility at the moment in terms of having visitors on campus. But our student athletes are masked up. Several of our teams are masked up in practice as well. But when they're competing, we do allow them to take their mask off when they are competing as well.
Very good. We can open it up. If anyone that is with us today has any more questions, feel free to send them along and we can pose them to Jackie. So wait.
I will tell, some things that we have done over the last couple of weeks. Well, really just last week, we have relaunched our athletics website. So if you visit ritathletics.com, you will see a new website for RIT Athletics. So we are really excited about that. And last Friday, we launched our own merchandising store for RIT Athletics. So if you want to order athletic apparel for any of our sports programs, 24 programs, you can go ahead and order that apparel as well. We will work on trying to get some of our former programs. So football needs to go up. Men's and women's fencing needs to go up as well as bowling. So we have to kind of get some of our former programs up there so people do know they did exist here at RIT, but we did launch that last Friday. So really excited to have our own kind of freestanding store up so parents and alumni can go on board and do that as well.
Trying to find, I was gonna put the link up for the online store.
It's just if you go to ritathletics.com and you go to the top right-hand corner, you'll see a shopping cart and you can click on the shopping cart as well. And as Candy talked about our giving campaign that we're doing for the institution, for athletics as well, we'll be kind of launching some things, working with University Advancement and Marty and Dan. Want to give a shout out to them. I think they're both on the call, but meeting with them almost weekly to really talk about how we re-engage our alumni and Candy as well in that giving as well, but just encouraging everyone to get involved with RIT Giving if possible to support not only student athletes at this institution, but students in general. Support is needed and it's helping us drive many things on this campus and continuing to grow as a university.
I have a question here. Are there, excuse me, are there any more plans on growing RIT's presence in the Student Athlete Advisory Committee program nationally and also on campus with athletes?
So SAC right now, we have a great SAC group as well. That's led by Lauren Ziegler, who is a women's soccer student athlete. She's a junior. So she's doing a good job with kind of really growing RIT SAC this year and really getting them re-involved. Last year was an off year, so SAC couldn't be as involved, but they have been really doing a lot of things. We kicked off kind of our mental health Mondays a few weeks ago. It was actually like a mental health Thursday with our student athletes and did kind of a paint and pizza. So we're really trying to get re-engaged on our campus and really growing that group on campus, and then trying to grow that voice as well locally with our other Division III institutions and hopefully representation on national SAC for the Liberty League. So hopefully we can get a representative on national SAC to represent RIT athletics as well. So that group is really growing. They're refocusing on kind of the student athletes this year, meeting again. So every Sunday, the executive committee meets, and then every Wednesday, the SAC group meets as a whole as well. So they have a lot of ideas this year. This year, we're really focusing on engaging students on campus and getting them back involved in RIT athletics. As I tell everyone, if you come on campus and you walk down the quarter mile, you can see every athletic venue from the quarter mile. So really getting students to come off of the quarter mile is what we're focusing on this year. And SAC has been doing some Tiger Dance to re-engage students and get them back out at athletic events. And I can say it has worked. If you attended any event this year, Volleyball has been really crowded. Men's and women's soccer has been crowded as well. We had great attendance at our first women's hockey game. It was the largest, I think, women's hockey game outside of one global event we had before. And same thing for men's hockey. So we're really kind of trying to push the needle and get students re-involved and re-engaged. And that's really starting with that SAC program. So I can't take credit for it. SAC has really led the charge with that. Under Lauren's leadership, and Jeff Siegel is a staff member who works with that group as well.
I have a, excuse me, I have another question here. Thoughts on RIT's co-op program and challenges with student athletes that also have commitments to jobs outside of RIT?
That is a unique dynamic that's really unique and good for RIT athletics because the students get that exposure, but it's also a huge challenge because we have a lot of our spring sports who miss the whole fall semester and kind of really that base level training that they need to compete going into the spring. And we have it the same way as well. And then our fall student athletes miss the spring. So it's very unique for our coach to even put teams together for the fall. I think women's softball right now, our softball has only 7 student athletes on campus this fall. That is makes it very challenging, even just to have a inter squad scrimmage or a game with everyone on the field as a real live competition because you don't have enough student athletes here. So it's a challenge that our coaches have been dealing with for a long time here. They've done a great job managing it, but it's really trying to figure out those unique opportunities for students to do it. So making sure, if you're a spring sport, you do it in the fall. If you're a fall sport, you do it in the spring. And then we have a lot of student athletes that try to fit in a lot of co-ops during the summer as well. So RIT has been very unique and very helpful, especially on the academic side, to ensure our student athletes can fit that in. Some of them are doing it right after they graduate. Some of them can fit 2 in the summer, or some of them start later in the spring, especially for men's and women's basketball that kind of cross over into 2 semesters. We've had some of those students that start later in the spring to try to finish that co-op. So RIT has worked with us, especially athletics over the years, to ensure our student athletes still get that experience, but it does create a lot of challenges for our coaches, but they've worked through it for years. I think there's some things we can do to try to help improve that and really look at how we can balance that out. But that will be working with the co-op department to ensure we can kind of make that balance and student athletes still meet the requirements of the institution while still kind of fulfilling their commitment as a student athlete.
Just trying to see. Another question. How do we continue to grow RIT's full-time coaching staff, especially assistant coaches, to help grow the programs, recruiting, so on and so forth?
A big piece of it, we all talk about is funding, what we have to fund here at RIT. So of course we're limited by our budget, but that's actually something we've been working on with HR here on campus and truly doing analysis of what are our Liberty League partners doing in terms of assistant coaches, and then also kind of looking regionally and nationally at our peer institutions to see what they have in terms of assistant coaches. And we're unique because we are the largest within the Liberty League. We're probably the largest regionally for Division III. So we really kind of have to look at some of our D2 and some of our D1 counterparts, especially in our peer groups academically, to see kind of how we fit. So it'll be a balance, but that's something that we're working on with myself and Scott McVean, really kind of looking at those salaries, how we got to where we are and how we can grow it. So it'll be a small growing process over the next few years, but it's going to be kind of that funding piece that'll help us kind of really establish those assistant coaches. We do need full-time assistant coaches for 700 student athletes. We have several part-time coaches who work full-time jobs, who have lives and families at home who can't give us that full-time commitment. So we really need the ability to go out there and get those full-time assistant coaches, which will have a significant impact on the student athletes, kind of just day-to-day people to be in the office to talk to, and then competitively as well.
I'm just looking. I guess as we don't see any more questions, is there any sort of final words that you would like to let us know about?
I think the biggest thing is let's get our alumni re-engaged and get those back on campus. This past weekend, when I was at West Point, I met an alumni who graduated in '84 who had not been back on campus since he graduated. So we want to get our alumni, especially our alumni student athletes, re-engaged with their programs, get them back on campus, and get them here to see what we are doing with RIT athletics. Our student athletes are a special group. They need the support, they want the support. And we want to see, our former student athletes back here so they can see some of the changes we made for those who were here when Clark first got here. It has not changed much, so you won't see changes there. But seeing our new hockey arena, seeing what we're doing out at the softball field, baseball field, track, and at the stadium, those are some huge changes for RIT athletics. And so we want people to be engaged and be involved on our campus. Just give us your time and talents. Sometimes it's not your treasures, but we want your time and talents to be here and be involved and engage with RIT athletics.
Candy, we'll turn it back over to you. And I want to thank Jackie for letting me be a part of this, Candy for letting me be a part of this today. It was very informative and I always enjoy it.
Yep. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today as well. If you need me, my contact information is on our athletics website. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm in Lou's old office in the Ritter expansion. It was Lou/Wayne's old office in the Ritter expansion. So if you're in town this weekend or you come into town at any time, please feel free to kind of stop in and say hi, talk to our student athletes or our coaches. We can get you out to a practice or a competition, but just be involved and being engaged. If there's anything that you can think of that we can improve the experience here for RIT student athletes, please let us know. We're all ears, especially me, as I'm just starting, but I'm looking forward to the rest of this academic year and the future of RIT athletics.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie and Steve. There were some great questions from our audience. We hope you enjoyed this afternoon's webinar. Additional questions can be emailed to candy.boston@rit.edu, and that's Candy with an I. And your questions will be forwarded to athletic director, or like she said, you can find her directly on the athletics page. If you haven't already purchased your tickets to this weekend's homecoming game to cheer on men's hockey team versus St. Lawrence at the Blue Cross Arena, please visit the link provided in the chat box. Again, thank you for joining us. And with that, have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay healthy, stay connected, and let's transform RIT.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.